If you don't have a mindset about personal responsibility that says everything that's happening in my world, I have some influencer say so in it, then you're going to come off as a victim. And plenty of CEOs and executives live in that world. So when we think about vulnerability, I think there's real liberation. There's real liberation and vulnerability to say, hey, it's on me and I missed. It's not always my people.
This podcast is brought to you by Fast Slow Motion, a team of expert consultants that have helped thousands of growing businesses build scalable systems on the Salesforce and HubSpot platforms. To learn more, visit fastslowmotion.com. Welcome to the Fast Slow Motion podcast, where we teach you how to build a business you love while enjoying your life. I'm your host, Sam Donaghey, and today I'm joined by FSM's Director of Growth, Michael Johnson. Michael, as always, it's fantastic to have you on the show.
Sam, it's always a pleasure. Excited about today.
100%. And today's episode is one that you won't want to miss. Today on the show, we're talking with someone who helps CEOs level up their businesses. So whether you're leading a multi-million-dollar enterprise or if you're preparing for your next big role, today's conversation will provide actionable insights. Joining us today is Kurt Graves. He's a seasoned leadership coach and an 11-year master chair with Vistage, the world's largest CEO coaching and peer advisory organization. With over a decade of experience mentoring CEOs, Kurt has dedicated his career to helping leaders evolve, both professionally and personally. So Kurt, it's just fantastic to see you today, and thanks for being with us on the podcast.
Oh, I'm thrilled. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Kurt, thank you so much for joining us. And we met initially at a Vistage conference in Charlotte. You were there. You were my chair facilitator for a breakout session I was giving. And I've got to say, we've talked about this just before the podcast started, but I was blown away about the amount of energy you brought to the group. And it was inspirational to me. I was just like, I've got to know more about Kurt. So thanks for joining us. Thanks for giving me and our audience really an opportunity to learn more about you.
I think I start at high energy and just go north from there. So it was fun to be with you. It's just always fun to turn a room on. So we had a good time. I know
Absolutely.
we did.
Absolutely. Definitely did that. Well, I want to start with some of your background, and you've had a tremendous career prior to Vistage. Just looking at what you've done, COO, controller, CPA, entrepreneur, but just I want to dive into one role. You also led Organización Corona as CEO for the U.S. ceramic tile operations. And so I want to dive into that a little bit. I can imagine you had in that role a whole host of challenges. And what are some of the top lessons during that time that you learned there?
Well, so Corona is a fantastic company, first of all. I would say the best company I ever worked for. I just loved working for them. Great values, at that time, 117-year-old company, family owned, large, there was resources, it was great. But probably the first lesson was we were a greenfield. They'd not been in the U.S. up until that point in time. And we talk a lot about values, in all our businesses. Certainly it's where it starts. They had a terrific set of values. And initially the thought was, look, we're going to be coming to the U.S. market. Maybe our values won't work for us. And our American leadership team said, no, we're going to have the exact same values. The challenge will be to put them into North American context, but we're only going to have one set of values. And I'm a big values person. What we believe, what we think is how we act. And that was the first big lesson, was stay true to the values that got the founding group together and get aligned to that. That was the first thing we did right. There's lots of things we didn't do right, but that thing we got right.
Yeah. So just with that, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people that are listening to this, they may have not spent a lot of time thinking about their values, or maybe they have. And it sounds like, there was some intentionality there. If you've got that list of values, how do you put that into practice? Like, what are some of the things that you can do, especially as a CEO or an owner or a founder, to ensure that those values are kind of entrenched in your organization?
You listen for values and in the conversations. So when initially the company out of Colombia, Organización Corona, had the idea of coming to the States, their CEO came up and along with his CFO, and they interviewed just about a dozen Americans in the meeting about their ideas of how they're going to get in the U.S. market. And at some point, there was a question that was asked of the CEO. He was saying, this is our plan. This is the size of business we think we're going to go to. And I stuck my hand up and said, what if it's not that number? What if it's half that number? What are you going to do? And his name was Reynaldo. He's a fantastic leader. And he laughed and he said, I don't know. We will hire people who will make it their problem. I will hire smart people and they will make it their problem. And they will figure out how to get to the number. And it was the first time I think I ever heard a CEO say, I don't know. And he also had such a wonderful sense of humor. And I got in the car after being in that meeting for a few hours and called my wife to drive back from Atlanta where we'd met to Charlotte. And my wife said, you're going to go to work for them, aren't you? And I said, if they offer it, absolutely, because I can work for that guy. We shared the values. So even if they weren't stated, they had that humility, they had humor. Those are both important things to me from my background. So yeah, I would just say you listen for values. When you're interviewing people, you listen for values and you test to see if they're really your kind of people or not. Life world's big and life's short. So, why spend a lot of time with people that don't value the same things you do?
Absolutely. Totally agree. And Sam, I'm sure you agree, being a recruiting director, it's about matching people with the values of the organization. And that's the best fit for everybody. That's a win-win. When someone's working for an organization that aligns with kind of their purpose and their applied skills and their background and some of their natural capabilities and their values, and it's a win for the organization. It's a win for them.
Plus, as a CEO, you can scale your business a lot faster if you're hiring in people that know things much more than you do, right? You can delegate and you can outsource as opposed to creating silos in different divisions. How do you communicate your values to your team then, or your organization, to sort of create that alignment, Kurt?
And I think that I think that everybody's watching the leaders when they walk in the door and when they walk out the door, and they're paying attention to everything. So it's how you behave. It's what you put up with. It's what you reward. It starts, I'll go back to, since we were talking about interviewing first, this is just a pet peeve on my side with the members. Hopefully they only have this behavior when they start early. But the reality is that when someone's coming in, that interviews process is happening, it's easy to get a resume. It's easy to have a history. The real interview, unfortunately, for most people is starting back. It starts when the person comes to work. And it can be even if somebody in a high up role. In the interview process, the candidate is dressing up nicely and putting on a good face. And the company is just checking to make sure they have a pulse. No real work is being done. If you're thinking about how to interview for culture, it's not hard. If one of your values is integrity, then somewhere along the line, you need to be asking the question, hey, tell us about a time when you had a lack of integrity, and stop talking and see what happens. And if they say, I don't really have a problem, then they've answered the question about honesty, because we all lack integrity. We all lack the character that is required of us in any moment by life. We all miss on that. And that gets you then to the right question, which is the next question was just like, hey, so thanks for the answer. How did you fix that? And that is not hard stuff. If people can't answer those questions, then you got to move on. But it's hard because it's tough, supposedly tough to find people. So a lot of companies let culture slide. I think culture rules. That's the first thing.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah. So obviously you've got a massive focus on hiring the right people, Kurt.
Hiring people, getting them into the right seats. The EOS model is right about that. Not moving them around into places where they can't succeed. The first job of a leader is to make people successful, right? So that's the CEO's job, is to make sure people, they have opportunities for sure.
Yeah. Actually, you've also, you've been a CEO. You've had a number of roles, but you've also got experience as an entrepreneur, right? So what is the biggest contrast between those two roles, would you say?
So my entrepreneurship, I was living in Oklahoma years ago, moved here to Charlotte, North Carolina with my partner at the time, my wife and his wife. We all moved here together. It was amazing. And we started a business, and it is really different. When I was an entrepreneur, it really felt heavy. It was really all on us. Everything takes twice as long. It's half as fun. It costs everything's double what you imagine. And the grind of that is just unbelievable. People become entrepreneurs, I think, because they want the freedom. But man, they're tied down to a lot of things, especially early on. It's just such a difficult thing to do. Starting a company like we did inside Corona, where we were using their capital, was a good deal easier. It wasn't my balance sheet. And we more or less, when we moved here in Charlotte and started our first business early on, we failed. And within an inch's breadth of not surviving, it was the second hardest thing I've done other than decide to go from being a CEO to a coach, which was proved to be equally difficult, I think. So yeah, and that's kind of back over on the entrepreneur side, doing my own thing again. So I just think it's when entrepreneurs, it is really all on them. Many of my entrepreneurs, they want that freedom, and so they lack the ability to really pay attention to details and do the hard work of operations. And they may resist getting the right person to keep them on track. That's one of the best things they can do. But entrepreneurs are amazing. I work mostly with entrepreneurs.
And is it a case of trying to like shift their mind and shift their perspective on getting the right help at the right time? Do you come into those kind of conversations often?
Yeah, always. We'd always be, well, a couple things. Always get the best people you can for the dollars you have, and always be moving up. The people that got you where you're at probably won't get you where you want to go. That applies to the person in your own seat as the entrepreneur. Just because you started the company doesn't mean you'll be great at it later as it gets larger. Accept your limitations and laugh at them, and get people in that can really help you. Get better people. We know all this stuff. Get better people than yourself. If your name is on the building, you got a huge problem, because you take everything a lot more seriously.
The theme here, the thread here that I've heard you talk about, I mean, with your previous experience and then this, I mean, the humility or the vulnerability to bring in outside advice, to bring in people that are going to challenge you to say no. How important is kind of vulnerability and that humility from a leadership standpoint for an entrepreneur?
And it's really important. Obviously, I think it was the Brene Brown quote that, we view vulnerability in ourselves as a weakness, but vulnerability in others as a strength. I don't know why we don't leverage that more. I think that vulnerability can show up if we're talking about people, and it seems like we are, and there's a lot more business than just people. But if we're talking about people, I know I have a former member. She's a graduate now, and she has a new book out, and she recounts in their time we had a conversation together. And one of the things I see sometimes is that members, entrepreneurs, all executives, we don't want to be personally responsible, right? That's a kind of vulnerability that we're not comfortable with. We would rather pass the buck. We'd rather say crazy things like, it's hard to find good people. Why can't they do it the way I do it? Founder's dilemma, even, I think, dwells in that some. And she and I were talking one day, and she was not owning, and she'll admit this, she was not owning the results of her team. And I didn't get pleasure out of it, but apparently I said something like, you're getting exactly the team you deserve. You're getting what you deserve. If you don't have a mindset about personal responsibility that says everything that's happening in my world, I have some influence or say so in it, then you're going to come off as a victim. And plenty of CEOs and executives live in that world. So when we think about vulnerability, I think there's real liberation. There's real liberation and vulnerability to say, hey, it's on me and I missed. It's not always my people, and own that part of it. So I'm pretty strong on that.
How much would you say, the success is defined based on getting the best people in to do the best jobs, as opposed to like creating great systems?
And luck, right?
And luck as
well. I don't know. I don't know.
We talk about systems quite a lot, right?
Yeah,
Michael?
Yeah,
during
absolutely.
the podcast.
I do too. Yeah. I do too. Yeah. But, so I'll say something that's not going to go down the right lane, and then I'll come back the other direction. I have a friend who has lived a really great, clean life. He lived his life by the right processes. He was diagnosed with lung cancer and died inside of 90 days. He followed all the right processes. Yeah. Sometimes life's just hard and work and circumstances don't work well. On the other hand, we know processes must work because the market rewards them. If you have well-documented processes, if you're actually following them, if you have great tools like HubSpot, like great, those sorts of things, and everybody's using them the same way, it is, a multiple factor of, a couple times different on your multiple if you go to seller, the valuation of your business. Even more important than that, you'll just make more money along the way and have more fun and fewer headaches. So the process, it's both. But sometimes you have great processes and then life throws something different at you. But then you'll recover faster, for sure. And I am my personality is more creative, even though I was a CPA, which might be why I wasn't there too long.
Yeah.
But I benefit from following processes, and everybody around me benefits when I follow them too.
You mentioned luck, Kurt. And I mean, I don't know if you've seen this. One thing that we've seen is, people can get lucky, but to be able to take advantage of the luck, you've got to have some type of systems in place to execute on it. That market opportunity, that windfall, that right strategy at the right time. A lot of times, I don't know if you've ever seen this, businesses can become victims of their own success.
Absolutely.
And they get a tremendous amount of influx and revenue, and now we kind of don't know what to do, or we can't handle the volume.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think every time you grow your business by about 15% in revenue, you're at another inflection point. And that's happened really quickly early in businesses. A fellow chair of mine, David Zerfoss, he uses this. Most people dwell in what's going on right now, and they only think about what's next. And that's a trap. If they would think about what's possible first, kind of come up higher, and then come down to what's missing, and then come back down to what's next, they would have a very different trajectory, a different set of opportunities. So what's next is a very limiting question. So to your point, like if you have great systems, that's usually one of the things that's missing between companies that can continue to grow. Or like you're saying, like something happens, you get a great client and you feel good about it, you become satisfied, but what was really possible, that's different. If you have great systems, you're going to be able to take advantage and grow and gap and just have more of whatever it is you want. So
and it's not necessarily that the systems that got you where you are what is going to take you to what's possible.
I'm pretty sure I'm not when I started Vistage, you have to have 8 people to launch a group. I had to go out and find 8 lonely business owners that thought they might want to hang around with me and the other folks. And I was not any good at it. I was a better CEO because I was bark at people and I was terrible, but the systems are good and I'll follow the systems, and I had time to learn. And I think, and 14,000 hours later of coaching and 92 meetings facilitated as of this week, the processes have made the difference. And somebody like me who's not very good at what they do. I don't think I'm great at what I do. I just think I have great processes and I follow the process.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that, Kurt. I mean, you're an 11-year master chair in Vistage.
Yes. I'm not a master chair all 11 years.
Yeah, but can you tell us what is a master chair?
So in Vistage, we build peer advisory boards for CEOs and business owners. And those groups can have maybe as many as 20 folks in them and maybe be as small as 12, something like that. The master chair designation truly is a measurement of the size of the practice. So chairs that are master chairs are in the top 10% of say there's 800 chairs or 650 chairs in the US, 800 globally. Let's say you're in the top 65.
What really drew you to Vistage, Kurt, from that CEO position, the CEO role to coaching?
I have early memories of being a leader from the time I was young. And I think from the time I was on the playing field. And so I can't tell you a time when I did not remember as a leader. My passion for growing leaders came early. I think that's always been around as well. But before I was at Corona and at Corona in the US, I built 2 leadership labs for middle, like director level folks. There's a guy named Larry Bossidy. He was a GE exec and then went on to lead some things himself. And he said, you could bet on anything. You could bet on strategy, you could bet on investments, but at the end of the day, you bet on people because people do everything. And I'm so grateful all the way back to my cross country and high school coach, Chuck Sheely, who was a tremendous leader. If I had not run into him, I don't know where I would have ended up, because he made me believe I could run, and ended up paying for my school and a lot of great experiences and travel. And he was a tremendous leader. So I have always been fortunate, it seemed like, to be around great leaders. And then I've also learned from some really crappy ones, and learned what a soul killing it is to work for terrible leaders. And so I'm passionate, and have been for a very long time, growing great leaders, because I think they make a difference in the world. And then I learned about Vistage, and I was like, I knew I wanted to do something on my own. I wanted to be something that was in human transformation. And when I heard about Vistage, I was like, oh my gosh, I think I'd be great at this, and I'd love doing it. So it's been a perfect fit for me. And I work with all kinds of leaders. Like, I might have companies that have revenue of 3 million, and I work with companies that have CEOs that have businesses in the 1.2, $1.4 billion range. They're all the same.
That's a great question. You believe that they're all the same. I was going to ask you, like, how do the needs of CEOs across different, revenues differ?
There's difference in complexity of mind. I think I'm taking that from another Vistage share. And I think that's, so you could have a $10 million business, but it could require a lot of complexity of mind. And so I think that leaders fall out more, they're more transactional, or if the businesses are simpler, they're simply more complex. I do think there's differences there, but every company's got to get up in the morning and figure out something, like some service to provide or some product to sell. They have to make it, or they have to produce it, or they have to deliver it. They got to get some people to do that. They gotta charge something for it. They got to collect some money. They got to hope people show up. In the end, they're all in the same business, which is the frustration business. And so if you put them all together, they're all lonely and they're all frustrated. They can all help each other to be less lonely and less frustrated. But they're all businesses the same. We're all humans. I think it's a human thing.
What would you say are common challenges that you see across all of your groups then?
Blind spots. You only know what you know. You only will do what you've done before. Yeah, I think that those are the two biggest ones, actually. So gaining perspectives. Maybe another one would be like in the C-suite, we'd like to think that people are more accountable. I don't know that they're inherently more accountable. So I think people struggle with accountability at all levels of the companies. And we say we're going to do things and we just don't do them. Yeah, make promises, don't keep them. So yeah, not doing what you say you're going to do, not doing things the way you've always done them, not being able to see change when it's coming down the pike at you, being able to ignore data, not even wanting data, not paying attention to feelings, emotions, wishing things would go away that aren't going to go away, procrastinating. The average, if I'm talking to someone, I'm asking them, what's the mulligan? What's the thing? If you could have done it last year earlier, you should have done it earlier. What was the mistake you made? It's almost always around, we kept somebody around too long. If you're in a group with a bunch of other folks, they'll help you be accountable to take care of that stuff earlier. But we don't like the pain.
Yeah. I can imagine though, Kurt, we'd already talked about vulnerability, but a lot of these things that, consistent across businesses that a lot of leaders run into. What difference do you see with your members and members in that peer group environment versus people that don't have that?
So let's talk about like somebody's going to do a CRM or ERP, which I personally view, like, if just hearing that sounds like someone's saying that I'm going to have a spine transplant. So who's going to say, yeah, I'll take two. I'd love to have two spines. And which one, are we going to take mine out first? It's hard work. Like the last easy day you had was, that last easy time you had an easy day, it was yesterday. Like you got to get to work. But if it's the thing that's necessary, and someone has come and sat down with their peers and they've talked about what's possible if they have that CRM in place, and then they talk about what's going to be next, and they go, wait, they can't walk back in the room next month and say, we really didn't go forward on it. Because if they do that, the other peers are going to say things to them like, you're adorable. Now I see the problem more clearly. Let's just talk about you. You don't keep your commitments. You don't follow through. And so that power in a group is people laugh at each other and poke fun at each other, and they make people do spine transplants.
Yeah. That accountability drives excellence.
You got to do hard work, man.
Wow.
Got to do hard work.
That's fantastic.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Pointing out the blind spots and then making sure that everybody's accountable the next week.
and have a laugh.
Yeah.
Have a laugh, right? Don't shame people. It's
Yeah.
hard. Hard stuff.
Right. And how would you kind of define success then for the leaders that you work with? Is there a measurable way of doing that?
Boy, they have to define that.
Okay.
Just this morning. So I have some people, I'll use myself as an example. I always felt that I was a bit different than other people because I have a part of me that comes from where I came from that's very adventurous, but also a numinous. So I love to hike. Like I hiked up Mount Whitney, if you know where that is, last year by myself. And I come to life in the mountains. It's kind of numinous for me. It's just wonderful. That feels like a kind of life. For me, that feels like a kind of success, but somebody else wouldn't want that. Strangely, I'm also a person who, if you were testing me, you'd find this guy not only cares about spiritual things, he equally cares about money. I have my original piggy bank still with my favorite coins in it from when I was just a little kid. So success for me, I keep score. I don't mind saying I'm competitive. I keep score in dollars. I keep score in my practice size, customer satisfaction, all those things. But what really gets me going is when, like yesterday, we in one of my groups, I created this thing called the Vistage. It's like the Oscar awards or like the Swifties or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so I just imagined every single member, like what was the essence of what they deliver to others in terms of how they make other people better. And like one of the members, I decided he was the John C. Fremont Award winner. You don't know who that is, but he was a guy that grew up out here in the 1800s, and then he thought he was going to make money as a pathfinder to the West, and he was the first military governor of California, got fired for insubordination, says something about my member, and then he bought some land in Monterey, and he got lucky because they found gold on it, and he ended very, very well. And I think that it's okay to want to keep scoring money and find meaning too. So for me, I think they have to define it themselves. Some people want lifestyle businesses, but they have to be reminded that they probably don't want to tell their vendors that they're only in it for the lifestyle. Not a very good piece of communication. On the other hand, some people want to make gobs of money and have lots of houses, and they have perfectly miserable lives. So they have to make some mistakes and figure out what success is for them.
What about there may be some other, maybe new Vistage shares listening to this, Kurt?
Yeah.
If you could talk to a new Vistage chair about how to grow a chair practice they love, what would you say to them?
It'll happen over time. The great thing about being a coach versus being an executive is if the work will end up doing you. If you do this kind of work authentically, it'll do you. So I'm sure I'm dutiful. My wife would say, I'm sure we were going to always be married forever, but I'm not sure what kind of marriage we would have had if you hadn't become a Vistage chair.
So transformational.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. That's amazing.
So I think that it's going to be work that does you.
Yeah. People are worth the investment and you get that reward. That's amazing.
Yeah. And it'll beat you up first.
Yeah.
Because this is not my model. I don't know where I got it. If we had a matrix, a 4-box, and the line was support, and the line across here, the horizontal line, was challenge. Many leaders are high in one or the other. So if they're high in support and low in challenge, they're going to create cultures of entitlement. Actually, this is Jeremy Kubicek's model, but they're going to have lower profits. I guarantee you the relationships are going to be thin. They're going to think the boss is kind of a pushover. You could have a culture where challenge was higher, but that you would get better results. I think your numbers would be better, but you'll blow people up and you'll have a culture of domination. But the thing that really unlocks liberation and growth and transformation and profits that he would say, and I agree, is like high challenge, high support. So being a coach means that you have to deliver both to other people. Like when someone needs a kick in the pants, or a slug to the head, you're going to hit them twice. And sometimes you're going to tell them they're not near as bad as they think they are. You can't do that authentically for other people until you get slugged in the head a couple times yourself, and someone picks you up out of the ditch too. So it's a very humbling work, and it's very transformational. So if somebody said they wanted to do this, I'd be welcome and get ready. You don't know what you've said yes to.
So Kurt, looking at some of your background, you've built leadership development programs, you've coached, and now you've chaired multiple Vistage groups. It seems like you've always sought to invest in and develop people. So why are people a worthwhile investment?
I think for me, it's a spiritual question. I believe that people have inherent value. They may not know it, people may not see it, but to be human is to be magnificent. And being magnificent is something that more of it can be brought out. It can also, the truth is that humans can be incredibly vicious and horrible. So I don't think we have a choice. Love is more powerful than shame, but shame runs a close second. So it's really important in my life to treat every human as best I can as valuable. And then that means if they're valuable, then I need to value them and do what I can for my neighbor, serve them. So I think that's the essence of real leadership, is to value people and to leave them better than how you found them.
It sounds like you'd be like a proponent of servant leadership. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, yes, except I never quite know what it means anymore, right? I think I'm a fan of love. And I think I just said it, I'll say it again. Love's the most powerful thing in the universe, but shame runs a close second. And that's what I'm a proponent of, is love. I think love wins.
Love that. So as we wrap up, we do like to ask our guests for a quote or a piece of advice that's inspired their journey. Kurt, is there a quote that you'd like to leave with our listeners today?
You queued me up well, and I think I might have two now. I thought I would have one. Okay, so one is, it goes this way. This is a leadership quote. It says, the first job of the leader is to define reality. And the second job of the leader is to say thank you when they're not doing the first. And I think if you're a leader, there's all kinds of competing ideas of what reality is in your business and your organization, and spend time defining what reality really is. Not in a really nasty way, but like talking about what is real, like what is really happening. I don't think we can ignore that. But also just having a genuine thankfulness. Another quote I love is by Walker Percy. He was a significant writer, won the National Book Award. And I used the script in my email. I'm going to read it over here. He said, I have discovered that most people have no one to talk to, no one that really wants to listen. And when it does at last dawn on a man that you really want to hear about his business, the look that comes over his face is really something to see. I think it's such an encouragement for us to just listen to people, because being listened to feels like love, right? And of all things, to entrepreneurs and business owners, somebody that will listen to them talk about their business, it feels like love to them. And they're amazed that they found somebody else who really cares. So that's what I do.
Absolutely amazing. Well, that wraps up today's episode of the Fast Slow Motion podcast. A big thank you to Kurt Graves for sharing some amazing insights today. If you'd like to learn more about Kurt's work, or you can actually connect with him on LinkedIn or via the Vistage website at vistage.com. We'll add those links in the show notes. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform, or you can explore past episodes at fastslowmotion.com/podcast. And if you have any topics that you'd like us to cover or questions about what we've discussed already, you can reach out to us at fastslowmotion.com/podcast feedback. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next time.